Okay, perfect. All right, go ahead, Roger. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Kat, and thank you to everybody who is attending or listening after the fact. Today, we really do have a tremendously interesting topic. This whole area of data resilience and cyber resilience. You hear a lot of people talking about it, but if you're not really thinking about it, you should be. You know, it used to be you backed up a number of years ago. This was not a topic that was really high on people's list. It was always there. It was somewhere in that list of important things. But over the last couple of years, we've just watched it move up that list higher and higher. And now I think it's probably safe to say it's in the top two items on anybody's list. It doesn't matter if you're a small company, doesn't matter if you're a massive company. In fact, the bigger your company, the bigger this problem is. I do not know how the security and IT folks sleep at big companies, because this is just a massive issue that just continues to escalate. And we have a great group of people today to talk about this. We have IBMers, we have business partners. We've got a lot of stuff to go over with you. And one of the folks on this panel, Ian Shave out of the UK, many of you will know him. This has been kind of a hot spot, a hot button for Ian for some time. And the thing that I really like is that Ian has been doing a fantastic job of turning a sometimes complicated discussion into something really simple. So I think everybody's in luck today. This should be really good. And actually, let me just kick it over to Bob first. You're out there dealing with clients directly, and you've mentioned that this is a huge issue that you encounter pretty much every time you turn around. Yeah. Do you have just some general thoughts you'd like to start us off with?
Sure. Great. First off, Roger, thank you again. And again, I'm honored to be invited and be part of this panel. To all you listening, we got some serious talent here with these IBMers. Again, we were talking earlier on, when you're working with these customers, the idea of cyber resiliency, that's, there's all these buzzwords flying around. I mean, some of us have been around long enough to go from, just backups to disaster recovery to business continuance, now cyber resiliency. Again, the whole idea of being able to withstand sustained, prolonged, targeted security breach, or what I'll call them boundary layer incursions, where, guys, a lot of people just don't get it. They just don't get it. They're just, cruising along, and it's like, oh, that's the other guy that gets ransomware, or oh, that's the other guy that gets, hit, or whatever it might be, until whammo. Wow. I mean, and that can be something sometimes as simple as water. I mean, in California, a lot of people working out there, floods, data centers getting flooded, things like that. It doesn't have to be, some state-sponsored cyber terrorism, or whatever it might be. These big, boogeymen, the Russians are coming, or whatever it might be. It can just be something as simple as, hey, we had one guy where, they were doing a bunch of road work and somebody trenched through a whole bunch of lines, and well, there goes your fiber, and that sort of stuff happens. But the ability to recover, the ability to return back to true business, is more than just flipping a switch to a remote site. But yes, so much of it is education. Again, hey, Bob, we've got those tapes. We've had these tapes for, 5, 6, 7, 10 years. Oh, really? What's the degradation on a magnetic tape? Have you tried loading that tape from 10 years ago? Have you tried loading that tape just to test from 2 years ago? And sometimes there's some pretty rude surprises. People think they're so covered and they're so protected, but when they go to test that tape, they can't even read it. And that's quite an eye opener. So again, so much of what we're running into in people is everybody's been scared to death or overstimulated, so to speak, by you know, attacks and what people think is coming for them. It's just, let's just slow down and let's look at really how you're protected. What are you doing? You know, how important is it to you? I mean, 98% of organizations, I mean, there's some amazing statistics out there, guys. You know, 98% of organizations say a single hour of downtime costs over $100,000. I mean, you know, some of these companies, I mean, it's hard to imagine, but you know, again, according to Gartner, the average cost of downtime is $5,600 per minute. Per minute. It's crazy. Crazy. Again, the biggest thing is so much of the time human error. You know, I'll call it fat fingers, you know, whatever it might be. But that's, you know, and you know, yeah, you get some malicious stuff too. That's easily tracked. I mean, people aren't normally, you know, that stupid, but you know, again, you know, you get people that, hey, you know, I don't like the way I was laid off, or I don't like the way I was downsized, or you know, whatever. So I'm going to take my ball and bat and go home. You know, that kind of a thing. And and off they go. But I hope that answers, Roger. I hope that gives you something to work with, or gives us something to work with.
It does indeed, and a lot of it sounds really familiar, sadly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And Ian, you know, I wanted to touch base with you because you and I had chatted, and you recently were over in the Middle East and ran into an absolutely wonderful, I mean, this is almost like a unicorn and a rainbow all at once, an incredible opportunity where IBM could have just been out in the cold because a significant client had real issues and just didn't have any idea that IBM could solve those kind of problems. Do you want to kind of maybe provide some insight? You don't have to name the client. I'm not asking for that, but just you've had a lot of these experiences recently.
Yeah, and I know the one you're sort of referring to specifically, and I will do my very best not to mention the customer's name. But yeah, it's an unfortunate sort of situation where it's a customer who's already an IBM storage customer. In fact, they're already an IBM Power customer, and so very familiar with IBM. Have lots of IBM people talking to them, but they very much recognise the threats of cyber attacks. I can't go into the specifics of why because it would probably give away who they are, but yeah, they were very concerned about a very major sporting event that was going to be happening, that has now happened. And so this was some time ago that they were obviously very concerned about it. And so they realized they needed to have some better capability to cope with cyber attacks, because obviously during a major sporting event, they probably become that much higher risk. And obviously, particularly out there, one of the real concerns for them is not only the business impact, but actually it's the embarrassment factor of if they were seen to be not delivering their service, that that would just be very, very embarrassing, which within their culture really would be a big thing for them. But the interesting part of it was they knew they needed something, and even though they were an IBM customer, they were looking at the market for solutions to cyber resiliency, but weren't talking to IBM because they didn't know we had something. They were like, oh, I know you do storage, I know you do servers, I know you do these other things. They didn't realize our capabilities. And they were actually a very long way down the line of having evaluated some people and thought they had the answer that they needed. Fortunately, we'd been working with the business partner that works with this customer, and told them about the these great cyber resilient capabilities we had. And they went, I need to go tell this customer about that. I think they'll be interested in that. And as soon as they literally said, hey, were you aware IBM has these things? They went, that's really funny you should say that. We've been looking for a solution, but we didn't know you had one. And the really great part of the story was they ended up buying our stuff because it was so much better than anything else they could get. But yes, it's truly a great example of how we have to be telling our own customers about what we do, because we can't assume they know. Because as we're seeing, sometimes they don't. But even more positively, when we do tell them, they realize we do have truly stunning capabilities.
That's excellent, and that's the kind of story I think we all like to hear. And you said it big part of what all of us, whether we're IBMers or business partners, is just making sure clients know we have this ability. For the folks who know me, for the longest time, I was a hardware guy because hardware is easy. Hardware, you can hold it in your hands. You know what it does. It's really simple. And IBM's got some amazing hardware. Simple things like flash core modules. It's like, okay, it's an SSD. Well, yeah, see if you could see close enough, you'd see the goosebumps right
Come on,
now.
Roger.
I know.
Let's be honest, Roger. What you're getting really excited about is hardware has lots of really cool flashing lights. That's why hardware's sexy.
It is true. It is true. But the fact that we can do the things we do with hardware is amazing. But over the years, I have really come to become a software guy because bottom line, at the end of the day, it's the software that's making all the magic happen. Now, if you've got fantastic hardware, all the better. But it's that software. And I used to just longingly look at the DS8000 group. As the poster shows, I spend a lot of time with Flash System. And I would look at the DS8000 group and I would see the things they were doing. It's like, wow, if we just had that capability on Flash System. And one of the abilities was something simple, or at least it seemed simple on the surface, safeguarded copy. Safeguarded copy, you think it's a snapshot, big deal. It is a big deal because it is not something you see the competition doing. You see them trying. You see them saying that they have this. But as you begin to look, you realize, well, this is not the same thing at all. What they're doing is creating maybe a worm snap, and they're storing it somewhere else, and that's all good. Let's not make any mistakes about this. Anything a company does that helps protect your data is a good thing, but it comes at a price, and the price is time. And time is the one element no one has enough of when a threat happens. And I would look at this safeguarded copy, immutable snapshot. And the thing that made it super cool was not that it was immutable, which basically is just a fancy way of saying you can't change it. Once you took it, it's fixed. Whatever it was, it remains. Now, the hope is that it remains a clean, snapshot, and there's no infection, no malware, no ransomware. But everybody was always storing somewhere else. And IBM came along, and with DS8000, we're like, well, what if we just stored them right here on the primary system? And that way, if something happens, I could recover instantly because I don't have to go pull it from somewhere else. And I would look at that and think, man, if you could ever bring that to Flash System, and then lo and behold, fast forward a number of years, it's now a core piece of what Flash System can do. And it really does separate us from the competition. And again, the competition has solutions, but those solutions take time. And, I guess, Ian, let me throw this at you because I know you've developed quite a bit of content around this. What are you seeing as you look at what our competitors have from a data resilience standpoint as far as recovering your data and getting back to work?
Yeah, so very interesting. A customer I was with just a couple of days ago, and it's a great example, and there have been many others like it, but this one's very fresh in my mind because it was literally 48 hours ago. And they, we were, right at the beginning, obviously, Bob was talking about, kind of almost like the history of where we've been coming from and what we're seeing and how people try and recover. And, we've seen customers that, for a start, think they have a solution in place that's going to help them recover. And we can get into the debate about whether it's really going to help them. But then the realization of, whilst what they have might be able to help them recover, and I think it was you that mentioned time, but it's how long does that take? So, we've seen, customers, in fact, there was another one in the Middle East, who had a solution from not IBM, was obviously built up to be, this was going to be the amazing thing that was going to help them recover in the event of a cyber attack. And you could argue that it did. But the detail was it took them 11 days. 11 days with 14 technicians from said vendor on site to help them recover. And I'm sorry, but I've not met a customer yet that finds 11 days, acceptable. I mean, the industry average is 23 days to recover if you don't have a cyber resilient capability. And, we all know from data protection, it's been built up. You started with tape backups, then you worked out you needed to recover them, then you had to work out how long it would take to recover them. And then eventually people started having synchronous replication and they started doing high availability, because the reality in today's environments is all customers need a zero recovery point objective, a zero recovery time objective for business critical workloads or their primary workloads. And basically, pretty much all the solutions out there, let me even be kind to them and say that they can help them recover. They absolutely cannot get the recovery times that businesses absolutely need. And unfortunately, that is why so many have paid ransom demands when they get ransomware, because it's just seen as the quickest way out, and it probably costs the business less just to pay the money. In fact, we know there were certain analysts at one point that used to make that as a recommendation, budget for paying the ransom. But things have moved on, and unfortunately, people are getting repeat attacked, and I think the current average is getting to be about 4 times in 12 months. So how many times have you got a budget for? So, but yeah, sorry, a slightly long answer, Roger, but what we're seeing from the competition, nobody, really no competitor can actually aid with the recovery time that we are capable of delivering for customers, particularly for primary. But I want to be very clear, we have an amazing set of capabilities to help customers recover their primary workloads and their secondary workloads. We can help them recover those primaries really, really quickly. Now, I'm not going to try and pretend that we're going to, suggest to them what you need to do is keep every single copy forever on array. By the way, I'd love it if I could find a customer that would, because that's going to be a real revenue generator for us.
Yeah, that would
you're going to keep, you're going to keep a small, a few days worth of copies on your array, and you're always going to need to keep things off array as well. So you need the combination of a hybrid solution, as it were. And we're really the only ones that can provide that. There really is nobody else that can touch our capabilities. And I'm talking about the realities versus the marketing hype. I mean, I think, Roger, you were talking about those that purport to have, immutable copies. And I think, we very much now try to talk about secure immutable copies, because you mentioned about that you can't change it. It's important that you can't change it, you can't delete it, and you can't allow anybody to change the parameters to allow you to change it. Because one of the other vendors out there, they talk about, you can change a parameter and you turn this volume into being read only. But it also mentions you can change it back to being read write. So if you can change it back, I'm not sure what value it was when it was read only. So.
To expand on some of these concepts, one important thing is we have a recommended architecture. Now, a key part of that, there's several key parts of that, and some of them are pretty fundamental, like the 3-2-1 rule, the integrating with SIM and SOAR tools that we can get in a little more depth at. But the other part is speed up how fast you can recover, and that's snapshots. The big benefit of snapshot, in addition to performance, is I can scan it to validate that's a good recoverable copy. And that's what we don't want to get too far away from. We can do other things with secondary copies as well, because there are fingerprints all over, backups if you have an infection. And we can prevent different kinds of different attacks, like a compromised account with administrative into the storage and into the backup. And we get into that. But the ability to take this secure snapshot copy that allows me to recover quickly and mark it as certified good. Or, hey, we found a discrepancy against, we put it against our AI engine in Spectrum Sentinel. We don't trust this. You need to look further, because the worst thing that can happen is you detect a corruption, you recover yesterday's copy, it's the one that was corrupted. And you want to not have this sit in there for 30 days. Ian said, I'd love to have a customer keep it forever. But the reality is, at some point, if you go back 30 days in your primary data, it's not any better than just not getting it back, right? You can't lose 30 days of business. So the ability to create this fast, secure recovery point, have a strong architecture that protects from other things, but also detect the corruption using that live data, that live copy of the data rapidly is key to this entire architecture.
Yeah, Dan, I'm so glad you mentioned about scanning, because you're right. Because I think there is the element of, if you've got the right architecture, that you can bring a copy back. But as you say, but you've got to be able to scan it, because I think the next step in helping bring those RPOs, RTOs down even further, even in the event of a cyber attack, is going to be that discovery phase, right? So it's whether you're scanning or whether we're talking about, even being able to detect it even earlier than that potentially, which is obviously what we're the kind of direction I think, we will absolutely see us moving in, is the earlier you detect that your data has become infected, the faster your restore is going to be, because you have less to restore. I mean, it's really that simple, isn't it? Because as you say, if it was days or even a week or 30 days particularly, wow, as you say, you can't afford to lose that much data, but wow, that's an awful lot of stuff to recover too. Because we all know what these threats are like. Once they get in, they just want to spread. And if it's had hours, days, weeks to spread, then yeah, your recovery is basically untenable, quite frankly.
Ian, you make a really very good point. We just finished a really good safeguard copy for our implementation on Power with DS8Ks. We were very successful in providing the customer. Now, guys, this is a Fortune 100 financial institution on Wall Street, where you talked about copies. You talked about, Dave mentioned before about valid, usable good copies. And also, Ian, you really hit time to restore, because that's really the key, time to restore. You're right. Nobody can afford 30 days out. Most people can't afford 5 days worth of data out. So what we structured is really an understanding with the customer and working closely with IBM Labs, really coordinating with the great, Laurel Bauer, the great, some really great people, where we're taking multiple snaps a day, multiple flash copies a day, right? And then storing those for a certain period of time, a week, if you will. But again, so many of these ransom attacks that you're hearing about these days is oh yeah, we put the bug in there a week ago or a couple of days ago, and then boom, then we launch it, and then we then we take it, that sort of a thing. And again, Dave, you mentioned scanning with AI Central to make sure you've got a really good copy. Extremely important. But the point is, you make a very, very good copy. With Safeguard Copy, it is so unique. I mean, it's not, shall I say that Evil Machine Company used to have, these black boxes that they would have make these wonderful promises with. And this other company that starts with a D kind of picked up with it and ran with it, and, oh, we got this. Homie, don't play that game. If you can't recover from it within a reasonable period of time, and again, with this particular customer, this is where you understand your customer. These guys can't afford a day downtime. They can't afford half a day downtime. SEC regulations. All the trade desk work, all the reconciliation, all the, when we are the checkbook, if you will, for, validating and covering all the bank and trades and everything for the entirety. We're talking millions and millions of transactions. Okay. What if you lost 2 hours of those transactions? How many hundreds of thousands are those? It just can't be done. And again, all these other customers, all these other companies promise, oh this, oh that, oh this, oh that. Nobody has anything close to what Safeguard Copy for I does. The resiliency, the business continuance, literally to where you can, they were scanning, these backups and literally just, working it through a mouse, just like, okay, we're on this backup now. Okay, we can load this backup now. And it's not like some of these other companies where they say, oh yeah, we can restore you, sure. Well, it's on tape, in the cloud, and depending on your pipe, that's where you get these 11-day, backup scenarios, because you've got to coordinate everything and all these. Who can do that? Who can do that? Who can afford that kind of downtime? I remember a long time ago, there used to be statistics where if a company lost or was down for more than 2 days, there was a 75% chance in 2 years they wouldn't exist. Because it's that critical. It's that critical. It really comes down to, what is your company worth? In this day and age, the company is worth what its data is worth. What its data is worth. I mean, we've all seen, we're becoming more and more aware of this, where, like you said, like Dave said, these beautiful bright machines, and Ian, you were saying these beautiful bright machines with great flashing lights and cool blue cables coming out, or orange cables coming out. That's great. Well, again, Mark and Roger, you guys had mentioned specifically, the software, that's the key. That's where Safeguard Copy for I comes in so brilliantly. Custom design, integrated, works directly with power, on power, works directly infused into the DS8Ks, and because these are all flash systems now, being able to hide that from outside, make them immutable. And again, Ian, you hit a really good point when you said immutability. Well, if you can change a parameter, that's not immutable.
No.
That's not immutable. Well, I mean, if you can go from, you can make it read write as well. So it's not, you cannot guarantee, and I mean, truly guarantee the validity and the accuracy of that data you're putting back in. And again, running, running multiples a day, keeping them for a specific period of time, whatever the customer's comfortable with. We've got multiple sites, things like that as well that you can run them through. That was really the key to the implementation. Guys, IBM has got such a great machine going with these people, GTS services, again, the Laurel Bowers of the world, the Dunwoody's of the world, where, the Selwyn Dickies of the world, where we can create these amazing products that truly are vaulted. People, you mentioned a vault earlier on, and I'm going to say something with Safeguard, because that's one of the implementations you can select with Safeguard Copy for I, or Safeguarded Copy for I, is you can go air gapped, vaulted, double vaulted. Again, these are all kind of logical processes. We're not literally talking like an Iron Mountain vault where we're going to stick something there. No. Nobody's got to run nowhere. It's all Ethernet. It's all in the systems. It's all still in the systems, but that's what makes your recovery so fast. That's what makes your resiliency, cyber resiliency, so strong. It's that cyber attack, becomes, only a flesh wound, and you can recover from that so quickly that you're back in business. It's no longer, oh wow, we have to recover a whole lot, or we have to rebuild. Okay, it's a lot easier to rebuild an hour or a half hour or 2 hours than it is 10, 11 days. A nightmare. I mean, let alone that, because so many companies now too are audited where they must have certain programs in place and must have certain capabilities in place in order to not be fined. I mean, the SEC gets real excited about this. And when you're talking about, big companies, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 financial institutions, it's even more. They're even more under the microscope. They're even more, heavily regulated, heavily looked at. So again, I get pretty excited about this, just because in this particular
I'd like to go back to
implementation.
something Ian
guys,
had said a few minutes ago.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I kind of like to go back to something Ian had said a few minutes ago.
Sure. Well,
We
let me
focused-
first one thing. I'm just going to say the idea that IBM under-promised, and through working with IBM and Synatrix, we over-delivered. Customer satisfaction, boom, through the roof. Really, really liked it. Just when they really got a chance to see what they were working with, see what they could do. They even tweaked it a little bit afterwards to do even more than what we told them they could do. And so that's That's good. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dave. I apologize. I get pretty excited here, but go ahead.
So one of the things we found in looking at our customers who've been attacked, as well as attacks for in general, not just our customers, because we want to look at it completely, is there are now multiple grades of attacks. You know, you can think of it as consumer grade, industrial grade, and military grade. And some of the bigger attacks, you know, they got, like with SolarWinds, they got into the development and manufacturing chain. So the end result was compromised. So one of the strange and somewhat ironic things about designing a cyber resilient solution is while we've got this fantastic safeguarded copy that we can be protected and give us fast recovery and we can scan with, we can't put all of our eggs in the same in one basket, even if it's an armored basket that should be. So the ability to have safeguarded copy concepts inside of Spectrum Scale, to have immutable copies in COS or even other object, cloud object storage or other, is an important part. In other words, the rule is even if your first, your most powerful weapon in this war is what you rely upon, you better have others, because if that's compromised, whether it's someone gets physical access to your data center, an insider or a disgruntled employee figures out how to undermine things, you can certainly do a lot of things to prevent that from actually happening. But the ability to follow the 3-2-1 rule and have an entire set of recovery capabilities. Certainly secondary storage is going to be slower than this primary copy on snapshots, but if you don't have that, you're only half insured. So the ability to have a deduplicated, encrypted, compressed copy on disk in a traditional backup, but have a secondary and tertiary copy. The tertiary copy maybe goes to a mutable object in a different hardened location. And those can also be part of your data set of detecting attacks. Because like I said earlier, when you get certain of these attacks, these massively quick encryption engines that hit a file system, the next time I back it up, alarms are going to go off like crazy. Like the dedupe ratio, the change rate, all that craziness, and we'll know. And if I have a secondary and tertiary copy that are delayed, now I know, okay, I may have ingested some corrupt data. Let's validate it, and I have good copies. So, and Ian had pointed out, there's primary and secondary. There's different tiers of applications and data, and we'd love you to keep everything on our premier solution. But even if you did, you can't ignore the other requirements.
No, sorry, Dan, I was being slightly flippant about the keeping everything on primary. That was just the dream, to have everybody spending all that money.
Well, and I am thrilled that you guys just had this conversation, because, and Dan, thank you for stepping in and saying that, because I was sitting here thinking, okay, I really do want to bring up that as good as safeguarded copy is, it's one piece of this whole capability that IBM brings to bear that, Ian had mentioned with a couple different customers. And Dan, you just brought it right out and said it. With primary workloads and secondary workloads, it's a grouping of tools, and the fact that those tools work together and that IBM is providing these blueprints and processes for how to assemble this, because, as good as that armored basket is that you mentioned, Dan, you're right. It's going to take multiple things to do this over time. And IBM has something, and I just want to throw this out there for everybody, both IBMers and business partners, because we have a tool that is not vendor specific, and that is the Cyber Resiliency Assessment tool. And let's not kid anybody. We would love to have clients buy 100% IBM, but I also genuinely want to be respected by the client and viewed as somebody that is worth talking to, whether they buy from me or not. And the beauty of the cyber resiliency assessment is it helps clients see holes that they may be completely unaware of. And they may choose to fill that hole by going to a different vendor, but I guarantee you they won't forget who helped them find those holes. And ultimately, it's a win. It's a win whether they buy from us or not. But in all honesty, and Ian, I think you probably have some facts and figures about what the conversion rate is for clients that run the cyber assessment tool who end up buying from IBM. It's really high. But I just wanted to make sure people are aware that we really are trying to help, whether we win or not in a deal.
Yeah, and I think importantly, you mentioned obviously there's the cyber resiliency assessment. We've got the cyber resiliency assessment tool. Obviously, we have an even more detailed one that our technical services team that can deliver as well, that can go further in depth. But funny enough, what I've been seeing probably more recently, so I think a year, 18 months ago, we were pushing, doing these cyber resiliency assessments an awful lot. And I'm not suggesting we've let up, but I think the difference is back then it's because you were having to convince the customer that you have a problem. You have a problem that you're not aware of. What I'm starting to see the shift now is people are going, I know I've got a problem. Can you help me build the answer? So I don't want people to forget. Yes, we've got those tools and we can help people understand where those blind spots are. I mean, you were using unaware of the issues, maybe just in denial is maybe the other way of putting of these issues, because the kind of things that we help uncover during these assessments, we've talked about data protection and we've talked about trying to make people more resilient. But what we've seen so many times is, and this is why I'm talking about denial, is so many organizations or so many customers think that because they've got cyber resiliency software and they've invested millions in it, I mean, they're spending a fortune. In fact, the customer I was with 2 days ago, they said, we've got so many tools, I couldn't even name which ones we've got. And they've got data protection because we've been preaching and helping them put those best practices in place for ages to, protect against, hardware failures, to protect against natural disasters and things. But those two things don't equal cyber resilience. There are additional practices they need to add to become cyber resilient. We've spoken about some of them, these secure immutable copies and things. But I think the other piece that we kind of touched on the fringe of is one of the key elements in all of this, and this is where I do believe IBM is helping people in a way others cannot. It's not only the fact that we can provide this, down to your point of, across the spectrum, for the short-term retention, medium, long-term, etc., and everything in between, but we provide the automation to make that simple, because no customer I speak to says, sure, come in and make things more complicated for me in my effort to try and resolve this problem. So I think the automation with some of the new announcements we've been making, the fact that we're bringing, going to provide that single pane to be able to see how your status for data protection, cyber resiliency across all those spectrums, that's going to be so important for customers. That's what I'm certainly hearing and seeing when talking to the customers. That's going to be crucial. And then I think, I can't remember if Dan or Bob, if it was you that mentioned the fact that we can integrate in them with the SIEM, with the SOAR, these tools that the customers are investing in, that's huge for them as well. The fact that you can go, actually, the security tools you've been paying for. So then when the IT team is talking to the security team, hey, we're linking in. Yeah, that's absolutely where we are going to completely distance ourselves from anything anybody else in the market can offer right now.
If I may, one last thing, Roger mentioned something really important, and that was the customer, the cyber resiliency assessment tool. That was huge, because if you're working in some of these bigger companies with safeguarded copy, that's going to be one more tool, because your IT guys are going to be your partners trying to sell this to management, to pay for this, because these are not inexpensive installations. These are not inexpensive or simple installs. This is going to take some time. This is going to take some planning, and that's one more. And candidly, with this most recent one, that was rather eye-opening too, because a lot of these companies sit back and, like you said, Ian, we've got so many tools, we don't know what to do with. We have so many tools, we're pretty bulletproof. But when we went through that CRAT, again, with Gunny down there out of Tucson, with the group out of Tucson, it's just like, it was kind of like, we that's a really good point. Or, oh, we thought about that and we thought we addressed that, but you know, and it's a really cool thing, because the guys, I realize we're running at the bottom line is, again, Ian, Dan, Roger, you've all hit on this, where the rubber meets the road, where the bottom line truly means the bottom line, dollars and cents bottom line. How fast are you back in business? How fast can you get back to a functioning, usable, workable IT system? That's it. That's the bottom line. 11 days is a death sentence.
But even when we talk about the integration with these tools, a lot of companies will buy a tool like a QRadar or Splunk. You talk to the storage guys and say, you're forwarding your security events, right? When someone tries to log into your backup server, you're forwarding that to your SIM tool. No. So they go, that's an OS tool, or that's the security team's tool. I said, yeah, but you've got to provide them information. Because the one thing that's better than recovering quickly is detecting it before they can get in. And there are fingerprints for that too. So our Cyber Vault architecture has, hey, put up your SIM and SOAR tools. We'd like it to be QRadar, but if not, but make sure you're feeding the information in, because you don't want to be the guy that says, oh, they deleted my backups and I can see where they were trying passwords or something until they figured it out and my passwords weren't secure enough. You don't want to be that person that has to report that I should have detected this 72 hours ago. So it's a full
very, yeah, very,
That's huge,
very
Dan.
much
That's
so.
huge.
And you know, Dan, you said something just a little bit earlier where you were talking about scanning files, and that's one of the things. This has been a really interesting shift watching in this whole data resilience and cyber resilience scenarios, where that scanning removes the guesswork. I mean, there's just zero guesswork anymore. It's like, this is known good. We've marked it, we've cataloged it, we know it. And now it becomes really, oh, see, it gives me goosebumps again, because this is so cool. Admittedly, it's really geeky, but it's so cool because you've proved the efficacy of that snapshot, that copy, and now the time comes to move that copy further off, you know, to an off-site location. And the beautiful thing is, we still know it's known good. And so if worse came to worse and I have to, you know, get that secondary recovery, I know which one I can get. And again, it goes to reducing that amount of time that has to be spent. And I'm really, you know, I know it sounds corny, but I'm really proud to be at IBM right now, because I see us really making genuine efforts that are effective at bringing efficiency. And I believe, Ian, it was you a few minutes ago that talked about automation. And because it has to all be simple. I mean, bottom line, we all know that. There's no mystery. Anything hard, people just naturally kind of shove to the side. And they know they should do it, but that doesn't mean they're going to. So I really like, you know, seeing what we've seen. And I hate to do it because this is really a great conversation, but we need to bring this to a close. Let me just ask the three of you. Dan, I'll start with you. If there's anything final you'd like to add to the conversation.
No, finally, I'd just say that we've got good architectures that show all the different things you need to be doing, from best practices. Happy to talk about it. And IBM is uniquely positioned in that it can provide that capability end to end. And I think everyone said that very well already.
And Bob, as a, well, I hate to say an outsider, let's just say as a non-IBMer.
I appreciate that.
Is there anything you'd like to add to the end of this conversation?
Yeah, you're right. Nothing complicated is easy to do, but again, I can only go by the feedback that we've had from our customers after post implementation. It's like you've got guys sleeping at night now. You know, you've got knowing that, guys, we live in an era of state sponsored cyber terrorism. You know, I mean, and it's like, you know, Ian mentioned before, the bigger you are, the bigger the target you are. Or maybe that was Dan, but that's true. That's true. We have the solutions. IBM has the solutions. As Dan said, they're completely integrated. So lo and behold, we can tell you what backups were good. You've got multiple of those backups, and we can restore you within minutes as opposed to 11 days. You know, sometimes things can happen so fast where people don't even realize they've changed, you know, and it's just tremendous. Roger, I appreciate your excitement for IBM because, again, it's like nothing else. Go get them, guys. Go get them, guys. They're waiting for you. There's customers out there right now praying that they don't get hammered by something horrible. And they're out there praying, hoping that something like this is going to come save their bacon. Right in with your white hat.
There you go. And Ian, is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
I'd only like to sort of add, because yeah, it's been a fabulous conversation about, I think, the pain points we see our customers having, and the fact that we do have capabilities to address them, irrespective of where they lie, irrespective of what the kind of recovery point, recovery time objectives they've got for different workloads are. We can help them, and we can help make it look very, very simple. The piece I do want to add, though, is please don't anybody walk away from this thinking, because we've talked about some of the large accounts that are going to need it, we've got this capability for the small, medium, and the large. You know, we can offer it on our low end storage systems. We can offer it on our high end storage systems. We build and are building and have delivered solutions for the small customers as well as the big customers, because whilst you could in theory go, the problem seems smaller for the small customer, it's arguably bigger because they just freely admit, I don't have the skills. I can't do this. I need someone to come in, build this thing, automate it end to end, because I can't do it. I don't have the resources and the skills. So the great thing, hopefully what everybody is hearing, is the capabilities we've been talking about, we truly can deliver for pretty much any customer out there. Because, you know, if it's in manufacturing, for example, I mean, one of the customers, you know, that's actually in produce, recognized if suddenly they can't deliver their produce, there are 3 others right around the corner that will go deliver it and nick their customers if they can't deliver for a few days. So this affects everybody. So I think that's the key takeaway. It affects everybody, but we can provide solutions for everybody.
Fantastic.
Well said, Ian.
Well,
Well said.
gentlemen, I really appreciate all of you coming and sharing your knowledge and expertise. I hope this has been beneficial for the folks listening. And with that, I will turn it back over to Kat.
Yes. So again, thank you so much to our panel and to everyone who attended. As a reminder, this session was recorded and it will be uploaded to our Mid-Market Tech Talk YouTube page for you to watch the replay or send to your friends. So thank you so much for spending your Tuesday morning or Tuesday evening with us. And with that, thank you so much. And we'll see you on our March Mid-Market Tech Talk. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Aloha.